The fifth studio album from the New York-based indie rock and punk group Parquet returns with their own brand of quirky, fun and interesting sounds and songs that make for an enjoyable listen and chalks up another decent album to a catalogue of their many other solid studio projects. With the tracks having both a sense of personal attachment as well as their own style of off-the-wall eccentricness, the group gives us human performance. One of the prominent themes of the album is the band referencing their hometown and the area where they grew up. The song I Was Just Here is the ramblings of a city-dwelling denizen and his inner thoughts which lead to him going out to buy some Chinese food from his local eatery before discovering to his displeasure that the place has closed down. Everything has a rather gritty and gravelly sound to it, the bass guitar in particular, and despite the charm the song tries to represent, overall the presentation of the instrumentation as well as the very monotonous and unenthused vocal delivery isn't something I particularly enjoy, and is the track that I enjoy the least on the album. The sixth track, Captive of the Sun, is a more detailed track about city life, the noises, the hustle and bustle, and how the song's protagonist finds himself unable to enjoy himself because of his surroundings. Much like I Was Just Here, the instrumentation has a rather slurry feel to it, and unlike shorter tracks where they have a more definitive end, this one sounds as though it was cut off way too quickly and could have gone on for another minute or so. The song One Man No City, personally my favourite track on the whole album, has the protagonist revisiting the area where he grew up and observes his surroundings, how nothing has changed and there's been nothing in terms of revitalisation. Along with a nice guitar rhythm opening the track, introducing bongo drums shortly afterwards, bass guitar rhythm, and an instrumental outro that lasts around 3 minutes where the guitars have a chance to play out a little, it doesn't become chaotic, remains restrained, and closes the track solidly. Although not about New York per se, the song Berlin Got Blurry is another observational piece where the protagonist lists off sights and situations he sees in Berlin, and how being in an alien country can often leave one with a sense of isolation. Probably with the most out of the blue instrumentation out of all of the tracks on the album, having a very spaghetti western vibe to it, it's a rather endearing and very enjoyable track to boot. Another lyrical theme on this album concerns relationships. The titular track recants the song's protagonist reflecting on falling in love with his ex, going further into the song where this relationship has ended and he personally has suffered as a result. His apartment is filthy and in complete disarray, and he finds himself in a depressed state of mind by the third verse, introducing words and imagery of phantoms and death. Quite a hyperbolic piece of writing. The instrumentation blends a nice mix of indie and punk that what results is a simple yet enjoyable track, and the little things like the brief guitar solo, layered vocals and twangy guitar in places are all solid. On the track Outside, the lyrics read as the singer continuing to reflect on a previous relationship and how it ended so messily, to the point where he alludes to something happening that he deeply regrets. The song instrumentally focusing on the more indie rock elements of the album and very short as well. One of the shortest tracks on the whole album, clocking in at under a minute 50. Steady on My Mind reads as the lead singer wanted to write an ode to his love interest yet finds himself overwhelmed with what he can write about them, so he just spills whatever's on his mind. The guitars have a nice patient delivery, the bass notes have a nice little hum in the background, and the bass drums also have a nice little rhythm going on there. Pathos Prairie comes off as a reflective piece on how relationships go through turmoil and tribulations and how some choose to try and brush it off with denial and laughter. It's another relationship breakdown song that's been backed up by an upbeat instrumentation complete with lively guitar rhythm, drums and hints of electronic effects here and there. And then you have the more unconventional tracks that are a weirdly welcoming presence. The opening track Dust is about, well, dust. Just dust. Nothing more, nothing less. Dust. Covering every single part of the house. Dust. Which is lyrically skeletal and thin, but oddly enough it's actually very enjoyable, with the guitar driven instrumentation providing a good balance of rhythm and melody, and with the brief hints of piano and synths, it's a sturdy opener to the album. Paraphrase reads as a simple case of listing random words and the singer giving his own definitions, ending the track admitting to his group's own lyrical messiness, as can be surmised on this track. I like the guitars throughout providing this constant rhythm and are more enveloped in the punk sound, even if I do feel the main vocal delivery can feel a little too strained and at times incoherent. And the track Two Dead Cops registers as one of the more darker tracks, a mini story about two cops on the chase for a fugitive in the ghetto before their lives are taken in the process, and how the response is anything but sympathetic. The drums have a more energetic feeling to them, and along with the rhythmic guitar piece, it's not the most textured or imaginative instrumentation, but thematically it brings the song together. Overall, the group has delivered a decent, pleasing album with plenty of things to like about it. Although I personally feel the album delves more into indie rock, and I would have liked a little more in terms of the punk elements that can be found in few areas which I don't feel are necessarily explored that much. Plus, to also tag this album as experimental rock, which I think is a bit of a stretch, along with some tracks that could have been a little longer. Some vocal deliveries could have been delivered with a bit more energy and clarity, life and character. But overall, it's a good album and one that I definitely recommend giving a listen. Overall, I score this album a 75 out of 100.